Hello and welcome back to the Checkpoint Reach podcast. This is a gaming and occasional movie news podcast. I'm your host, Luke Eldon, and as ever, I'm joined by my fellow gamers and friends, Sud and Perks. How you doing, guys?
Good, yeah, very good. A few technical difficulties once again, but I'm sure we'll work our way through them and produce a good podcast for today.
Yeah, it's always fun when surrounding neighbours have their dogs out in the back garden and barking.
Exactly. Lovely stuff.
The production values are high.
They are. Anyway, today, as the title suggests, is going to be an Anthem review because basically we've all played it now for a good number of hours and we wanted to get our thoughts out there on the game. Before we do go into that though, if you're listening on YouTube, give us a subscribe, a like and a comment on the video below, as that'll help the channel to grow. Anyway, let's get started. The Anthem review then. What are our thoughts on this game briefly? I'll start with you, Perks.
Where'd you begin? It's pretty much everything that everybody has already said that it is. And podcast. It's an average game at best. There's minimal pros and many cons, which we'll go into. But look, I really wanted to like it. I've committed a lot of time to it, as we all have really now. But it's overall maybe not quite what it needed to be.
Yeah, it does seem to fall short of the mark, doesn't it? What about you, Sud? What are your thoughts on it?
I think my first initial thought is it's pretty much just a Destiny clone, really.
Going there already.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sort of half joking with that, but yeah. No, I think I pretty much agree with most of what Perks has said. Really, going in, I think our expectations weren't exactly high going in. I don't think, but I'd just say an average game. Really, I think it's not a great game. It's not a terrible game. There's some decent things about the game. There's some good things about the game, but I think there's a lot wrong with it right now at the minute as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I'd say initially.
Yeah. Obviously, I'd echo your guys' sentiments. We all tend to really agree with it, don't we? It has got some pros, but there are a lot of negatives as well that just outweigh the pros. I think it's disappointing being a BioWare fan. They were relying on this game, by all accounts anyway that's been reported. They were relying on this game to be a hit so they could continue developing games under EA's umbrella, but I don't know yet how that will unfold. I guess we should start with the positives. And for me, the positives were definitely the combat and flying mechanics. I thought they were done really well. Really well. How about you guys?
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. The flight in particular, I think we can all agree is the best thing about the game. It's a lot of fun, and that's one thing that's transitioned well from the first time we've seen it through the problematic demo to the final product.
It's very smooth, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely so. It's really enjoyable to traverse the world, pretty much whatever you're doing, whether you're up high or down low, you're in a sort of dungeon or a sort of tree environment, foresty, whether it's an open space, the waterfalls, everything's satisfying whilst you're flying around there. It's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think for me the flight element is probably the best part of the game, along with the combat. I'd say probably the best flight I've seen in a game. Really, I can't think of a game that's done it better. How easy it is to use, how nice it feels to fly around the environments. It's and I think they've definitely nailed that aspect, and it was an important aspect to nail because a lot of the game you are flying around. I mean, pretty much 50-60% of the time you're flying around. So yeah, it's an important aspect of the game.
Not knowing where you're going if you're in free play because you can't mark on the map.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that a bit later, but yeah, that's a bit of a problem. But yeah, the flight itself is really good, and yeah, I think that's what I'd say about the flying.
Who needs waypoints?
Yeah,
good point.
Just enjoy flying into no man's land.
Yeah.
But it's good though because it's not just the traversal that's great. Flying plays a big part in the combat, which we've just mentioned as well. So
I was just going to touch on that. Yeah, it really does.
Exactly. So it's like whilst it is a big part of getting from A to B, it's so useful, especially as the difficulty progresses and you move through the ranks in that sense. It becomes a big part of the way that you have to sort of use your guns, your abilities with
Yeah.
with flight mechanics. You can't really just sit in one spot and sort of aim down sights. You've always got to be on the move. You've always got to be making use of the dodge mechanics.
I love the dodge
And
mechanic as a storm.
it looks so cool, doesn't
It
it?
does. It really does.
So when you put everything together with the flight and the combat, pretty good overall.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it complements it lovely. Go on, Sud.
Yeah, definitely. I was just gonna move sort of onto the combat aspect as well. I think the guns all feel nice to use. There's a few guns that obviously feel better than others. Like I think the heavier weapons feel better than the lighter weapons. I do have a bit of a problem with the way the sort of machine pistols and things like that operate. I don't like the noise they make. They're a bit. I think some of the weapons are a little bit wishy-washy, especially the close range weapons, sort of as the shotgun and machine pistol, things like that. But the longer range weapons and heavy pistols feel really nice to use.
I mean, honestly, if you've ever played a Mass Effect game, then you know exactly what we're talking about here. The combat is the exact same
Yeah.
as Mass Effect games. You have
Yeah.
the guns, you have the abilities, you have the combos that work in tandem together, the buffs and debuffs. It's the same thing.
It feels like an evolution of Andromeda, doesn't it? The Andromeda combat.
Yeah, and
Which
the
I enjoyed
Andromeda combat was very good as well. I thought.
Well,
as
again, similar to Anthem, it was the best part of the game, wasn't it? Really, probably the combat in Andromeda, I'd say,
Yeah.
or one of the better parts of the game, anyway.
Well, it was enjoyable.
So
So
yeah, definitely. So they seem to have nailed. BioWare have definitely nailed the movement and combat side of things.
I think it helps. It's just so fluid.
Yeah,
It doesn't
really,
feel. It doesn't
really nice
feel
to play.
clunky, does it? It's smooth, fluid. So it it immerses you into the combat.
Well, the thing is as well. I think obviously we're going to move on to the maybe more problematic areas of the game in a bit, but the combat and the flight mechanic is what keeps me coming back to the game. Really, that's what's keeping me coming back to the game at the minute. Because it just feels so nice to be, using the guns and flying around and using the powers and stuff like that. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's fun, but I guess the killer question is going to be: is it fun enough?
Well, that's obviously points we're going to come on to in a bit, but I think overall, as in sort of as a mechanic, it's done its job. I think we can all say the combat and flight element has succeeded and maybe even exceeded our expectations.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. What do we think of the Javelins then? I'm a big fan of the Storm Javelin. I think that's done really well.
Yeah.
I like its abilities. I like I mentioned before, just its motions or animations when it does a dodge and it just disappears and then reappears. It's done really well. I think it's pretty cool. How about you? What are your favourite javelins to use?
Well, I'm using the Interceptor, and yeah, I like the Interceptor. I like certain aspects of the Interceptor. It's tough to say at the minute because as I get further into the game, I feel like my class isn't quite as good as maybe a couple of the other ones. But I don't know if that's more me, the way I play, my style, or it's the actual game itself. I think I was talking to Perks about this actually off air, about how the further you go into the game, it seems like the heavier classes, such as the Colossus and things like that, maybe you've got a slight advantage being those in the Grandmaster sort of difficulties and things like that. The fact that they can take a bit more damage, they've got a big, massive block shield they can use, things like that. Whereas the Interceptor, it seems as you keep going along, the enemies just become more and more. It just gets harder, doesn't it? Basically, and the enemies don't really miss. Doesn't matter how many times you try and dodge. Some attacks are just undodgeable, and as the Interceptor, unfortunately, you've got the least health, so that's always going to be a disadvantage. And the speed aspect of the game seems to become less important the harder the difficulty is. So,
I would second what Luke was saying. Really, I've decided to main a Storm as well, which is backing up my own prediction. Actually, from around a month or so ago, I said I thought I'd start with that, and I did. It's a super fun class, like you said. The way that it's actually portrayed, especially with the dodging, the sort of transition through time and space, if you like, for those few seconds whilst you disappear. It's pretty cool, and I like that. I like all of the abilities it has. Its combo chains are really satisfying, and they're easy to pull off. It's a great support and sort of offensive javelin. Everything about it seems really, really well balanced, or perhaps maybe a bit overpowered, but I'm a big fan of the Storm. I think it's no regrets from me picking that as my main to begin with. The Colossus seems pretty good. I haven't had much game time with it, but I've noticed playing sort of harder difficulties now, you see a lot more setups that at least have a Colossus to go and tank and taunt and distract whilst combos are being chained in the background. So
does it feel like a needs must?
To this point, I'd say yes. I would be very surprised if people were running 4 interceptors.
Yeah,
together in Grandmaster.
I've got to
2
be
and
honest.
3
I don't think. I think you'd struggle if you're doing Grandmaster 3 with 4 interceptors. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you'd have to be a very good player, 4 very good players at the game to get through it, because the amount of the health difference between the Interceptor and Colossus is a big difference, especially the further up you go in difficulty. And the only thing I'd say though about the Interceptor is I do think their ultimate ability is very useful. It's very useful against mobs. So if you're going into a thing later on the difficulties where you're facing a lot of mobs, I think if you've got a couple of interceptors, they can wipe out the mobs, and it's good to get revives for as well. So
it's definitely useful if you're the last man standing and you're trying to sort of get a team sort of res, if you like, whilst it's popped. That's good.
But I think actually what you'll start finding as the game goes on, people might start maybe doing 2 Storms, 2 Colossus. Because I think that would probably be the ideal from what I've seen of the game. Now, I haven't seen much of the Ranger, and that's a class we haven't really discussed, because I haven't really seen many Rangers. I don't know about you two. I've seen more of the other 3 classes than the Ranger. Seems like the Ranger's the least used class so far.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I actually think it's strange, because I don't think it's a bad class. But
no.
I think it's definitely the least appealing, and I think that probably harks back to the fact that in the demo and the VIP demo, you started off as the Ranger. So
it feels like the default choice.
Yeah, I think people were probably a bit sick of it after that. So
yeah,
I can see why.
I think another aspect is people like to have sort of specialist classes, don't they? A lot of people don't like to have like an all-around class. It's like they like to be like the master of something rather than
jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, yeah, so to speak.
Yeah,
whereas
that definitely makes sense. I think one aspect that I do like with the Storm as well is the hover mechanic lasts longer with it, and that's always helpful when you don't like spiders and the game's full of them. So,
that's true.
So I just hover.
Well, it's actually, in general though, I think the longer you can hover, the better anyway with this game. I mean, it's such an important feature. Especially, if you are one of the more quicker classes, that is one advantage you probably do have, the fact that your thing lasts a bit longer than the others.
Yeah.
Because hovering in this game is very important, especially against Titans and things like that. So,
well, with the Storm in particular, it's crucially important when you look towards the epic and masterwork and legendary gear, because a lot of it actually pertains to hover time, and it's a lot of it is sort of prefixed or suffixed with whilst hovering, so higher damage or combos do more damage whilst they're being chained, and there's a lot of percentage increases based around hover time, so it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we move on then to maybe some of the negatives, the last positive I wanted to throw out there for my personal opinion, I think the game looks very good. I think it's a good looking game.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think it looks good. I think, especially for the type of game it is as well, I think, because obviously you've got examples of games like Red Dead Redemption 2, and it's like, what an amazing looking game. But that's a different type of game, so... and like Metro and stuff like that, very single player focused experience. Whereas this game is a massive multiplayer online game. It's shared world shooter. So to get graphics like that look this good in a game like that is obviously a great achievement, and they've done a really good job, I think.
Especially after the demo as well, that was worrying, wasn't it, Perks? Remember when we played that, we were like, no way it can look like this. Thankfully, it doesn't.
It's definitely done a good job of enhancing things in terms of the graphical design, and I think like. Really what you guys have said, I think whilst you're out there in the world and you have a look around, especially the vistas and the sort of vast spaces, you sort of spin that camera around or go idle for a few seconds so you can sort of navigate that way. It's really cool. Everything does look like it should, which is a positive.
I think the environments as well look good, don't they? The different, like you were saying about the vistas and things like that. It's got there's a decent amount of variety there, and it looks nice. So
it does. So that's the positives, and before we move on to any negatives, I will say if you enjoy this game, then that's great. Just because we didn't enjoy it doesn't mean you can't, but we are going to go into some negatives now. from our personal opinions. Where do we start? There's a lot.
Let's go with the game itself. Let's start from the beginning. So it's the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I don't think it's a terrible story by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think it's an exciting story.
No.
It's not what I've come to expect from BioWare, and I completely accept that this game is not Mass Effect. I know it's not going to last a long while and have me sort of on tenterhooks for hours on end, but it's very safe, and it's just not exciting in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I think I'd probably actually be even more harsher. I actually think it is a fairly poor story. I know you say average, Perch, but for me, it maybe even goes to the bracket of poor. I think there's a lot of things there that there's just nothing there. It's just, you listen to these people speak, and to be honest, after the first hour or so, you kind of wanting to skip the dialogue, because it's just like I'm not getting anything out of this. You end up being like, I don't really care what they're saying, to be honest. Just let me do the next mission, because what they're saying a lot of the time is irrelevant, and it's just, I think as well, one thing that's disappointing is the sort of the way the way they introduce the main villain in the game. They don't really explain the motivations of the villain in terms of, yeah, okay, I get that, like, he's here and he wants to, take the Anthem and for himself and control it and things like that, but who is this guy originally? There's no sort of backstory to the guy. He just appears. It's as if he just appears, and it's like, oh, this evil man. We must.
He's got a horrible name as well.
Yeah, it's just
the Monitor.
The Monitor.
I mean,
it's a terrible name. Awful name. And
is that just because they were staring at monitors all day, every day, and they were
yeah,
just like,
maybe
we need a name? Oh yeah, Monitor.
But did you think that? Did you think that as well with the villain? He wasn't really introduced, or like it wasn't as if, Usually with these villains, you think of like back to Mass Effect with like. Save Mass Effect 1 with Saren. Like, there was a whole like backstory with him, wasn't there? And other characters would explain like why he is like he is and stuff. But there's nothing like that. And I know it's harder in a game like this, but there's just no sort of feeling of dread or anything, because it's like you don't really care, to be honest.
He's not intimidating, is he?
He's not intimidating. I mean, yeah, and that was a big, that was a big disappointment for me. That I also think that. Just the dialogue is just, some of it is really bad. It's just not good. Like, because they give you this option, don't they, when you're in, I know we're going to talk about the fort later on, but when you're in the fort and you're going around and the speech bubbles pop up, and a lot of the dialogue is just a waste of time. You get nothing out of it. It's uninteresting. They throw these corny sort of jokes in there.
It just goes on as well.
It goes
start
on
talking
to
someone, and they just keep going on.
It's just not interesting.
Like, this conversation not ending because it's leading nowhere.
Now, I don't think this is just a problem for Anthem, because I wasn't a massive fan of the Destiny 1 or 2 story either. I don't think they're great stories, but I think they had something a bit more than this. I think this could be the worst story I've seen in this type of game, actually.
See, I know, like looter shooters or whatever, their story isn't their main focus, but
no.
If I could pick a developer who I thought would introduce a decent story into these sort of games, I probably would go BioWare.
Yeah, you would, definitely.
Because I love their storytelling from previous games, but this one just, I don't know, it's just flat. It feels flat. That's the best way I could describe it.
Well, what's disappointing as well is that before the game came out, they promised, didn't they, that this was going to be a rich narrative story, and I know a lot of these developers do this, but with BioWare, you kind of expect them to do this, and they've not delivered on that promise. They explained it was going to be, not never seen before sort of story in this type of game, and it's just not at all.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, it's a very much so seen before story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any wow factor throughout the whole thing for me.
How easy are the twists as well to predict?
Yeah, they're not. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen.
I mean, on that note, I think it's really disappointing, right? Because this world with the anthem of creation and the cataclysms and the world changes that were all possible within, we saw nothing. There was nothing like that. And all of the factions were just filler. They were just there for the sake of it. There just wasn't any moment that made you sort of sit up in your chair and think, okay, that's where this is going. It was from start to finish. Average at best.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say as well, one disappointing thing for me was the, I don't think you've gotten to it yet, Luke, but don't want to spoil too much about the last mission, but the last mission for me was very underwhelming. I don't know if you found that as well, Pers. I found, it tries to build up to this, because I actually do think the story does slightly get better towards the end. It starts getting a little better, and then the last mission just completely makes everything pointless again. It's like, whatever. It's like, releasing air out of a balloon for me, the last mission. Because it starts, the balloon starts inflating. You can see maybe something's going to happen in the last mission. And then, no, balloon goes, nothing. And that's how I felt about the last mission. Just nothing, really. And then the credits roll and it's just like, meh.
Well, I was actually going to move on to level design, which I think plays a part in also not being memorable, because there's no mission that sticks out that I think, positively anyway.
No.
There's one that sticks out negatively, but there isn't one that sticks out like, oh yeah, that was fun, I'd like to redo that. That was a cool moment in the story where things got epic. The level designs in this game,
I would slightly disagree. There is one mission for me. I don't want to spoil what it is, because a lot of people might not have played it, but there is one mission where I thought, well, it's actually part where I thought, the story might actually be, getting a bit better here. There's something interesting happening. It's quite late on the mission. It's not too late on. I think you have actually played the mission, Luke. But where something happens that maybe, is a little bit like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But then they just never follow through with it. Nothing becomes of it, really. It's just, I don't know. It's just as if like, oh, okay, this thing's happened, and then we'll kind of forget about it for a mission or two, and then it's just disappointing. Really.
The problem is though with the level design though, even in the missions, it's stand here and defend this, get the signal.
Oh yeah.
Collect the orbs, bring them back. I mean, yeah, it's boring. I mean, Perks, you know more about obviously these sort of games and how they do their level designs. Being a big Destiny fan, how bad is this one for you?
Well, it's frustrating, right? Because, we talked about the world design in general, and the levels are set within that. So they've got all these great spaces, and they use them in the same way. It's bad. It's stuff that we've seen before. This is something that Bungie has been criticized before with Destiny. It's, look at these ridiculously open planets you've got. You can do anything you want, and within them you throw down a beacon, and you defend it whilst the signal charges and forms a relay, or you go and grab some echoes, or you repair the relic. It's just the same thing everywhere you go and everything you do, and it's just a bit bizarre. And sure, there's a few dungeon type experiences within the story. You go into places that aren't necessarily readily available within the open world, but even that, they're small. There's so much to be desired from things like that. And I think when you start to throw in what I would describe as public event type activities into story missions, for example, charging the signal or the echo delivery, like I mentioned just a minute ago, that's warning signs, because that crap should not be anywhere near the story in any game, not just this one.
Well, you mentioned about when you go into dungeons and stuff, but the problem is, yeah, you've got these dungeons, but what do you do in them dungeons? Collect the echoes, charge the signal. It's the same thing, just in a different environment. You do the same thing in the dungeon where you think, oh, maybe there's something different because it's a different type of environment. No, you do the same thing. You collect 6 echoes, and then the next part of the mission, it's 10 echoes, and then charge the signal, defend the signal, and it's just like,
it gets boring fast.
The signal one in particular is bad. It's used a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, them ones where it's like defend the signal, there's no challenge to it. Because half the time the enemies, you've pretty much charged 3/4 of the signal, and the first enemy starts coming into the circle. It's like, what's the point? Like, at least make it a bit more challenging.
Well, another part I wanted to touch on as well was obviously the tomb missions.
Oh yeah,
Challenge of the Legionnaires.
That's it. When you have to grind away, and you know what? One of the worst parts of this though. It's a grind fest, and really, I don't know how that's a mission to progress the story. But once you do it and you get inside the tomb, there is nothing. There's nothing to do. There's nothing cool in there. You walk up to the actual tomb, click a button. It's like, yeah, well done. On to the next one.
I was going to say, I suppose it's a slight spoiler, but to be honest, who's going to care? Because it's nothing interesting. So I mean,
It's
it's hardly even
literally
a
nothing
spoiler, really,
interesting.
because there's just no. You just basically you have these 4 things to do. You have to do like challenges and things like that, don't you? Which take a long time if you haven't been doing them. By the way, I think we should
Yeah.
mention that. If you haven't been collecting sort of materials and things like that along the way and killing certain enemies in certain ways, you're going to be there for a hell of a long time, possibly 5 to 10 hours almost, I'd say, if you haven't done most of the things. And you have to do this 4 times. You have to fly all the way across the map because they're in 4 different locations. You finally do the challenge thinking, oh, what's this epic thing I'm going to be doing? Is nothing. It lasts, 5-10 seconds in the tomb, and then you're out of it, and then it's like, oh, it's done.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
terrible.
these tombs are meant to be great warriors from the past. Well, you don't get anything, though, when you go in there.
No.
You don't get any background stories
No.
to them. You don't, like, meet a ghost or something that just, like, tells cool stories of their past. Nothing.
You'd think maybe you'd get some sort of special,
Weapon,
I don't know,
maybe,
weapon or special... Yeah, just nothing. Nothing at all. And you don't even really get to speak to them, do you? Well, you don't speak to them at all, really. It's just nothing.
Well, you don't speak to
You
anything.
don't speak to
You
them.
just
No,
go and
no.
press
You press a button and
on the
then
Xbox anyway on the
Yeah.
crypt, and that's it. And
Yeah.
that honestly, the challenge of the Legionnaires story mission, and I say that very loosely, is unforgivable mission design. It's one of those things that if it was in the game, if it absolutely had to be included, it should be some back end challenge that you have to scroll through menus to find for people who want to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe to get a
How's it not a
dialogue
side
box at the
mission?
end of it. It's horrendous. I wouldn't even give it a side mission. I would give it just a random challenge that
challenge,
you never
yeah.
have to see unless you choose to do stuff. And even then, it would be bad. But to include it in the story, and to include it so early on in the story,
Oh, yeah, it's demoralizing.
Well,
it's abysmal.
Well, the thing is as well, you finish that and you think, right, well, hopefully that's it now. There's no more. And then what is it? 2 or 3 missions later, another type thing. Okay, it's not as bad, but there's another grind type thing you have to do, and it's like, what is this?
I mean,
come
thankfully,
on.
the second one is nowhere
It's not
near
as bad. Don't get me wrong. But
It's really not.
I just mean in terms of the principle of it being in there, though. It still shouldn't be in there.
A couple more
Personally,
flaws with this as well. It's clearly to pad it out, but a couple more things. If you're in a world event or something and you need the treasure chest at the end, for a time, if you didn't get there first, you didn't get it recorded down.
I mean,
it didn't go down towards one of the quests that you needed to do.
That was awful design. And I mean, I know we're going to come on to maybe some of the glitches and stuff in a bit, but that is one of the worst parts. That, I mean, the fact that only the person that opened the chest originally could get there, it's like, really, is this really a thing? Like,
you do all the hard work and someone just swoops in free play and just
everything.
Hey, I'll take that.
What terrible design that
was. Or
was.
vice versa, right? Because that's what
I did it to
people
someone.
ended up having to do.
Yeah.
And like, we can be so thankful that was fixed quickly, and it really was.
Definitely.
But that doesn't forgive it. And yeah, it just, you know what? If that was one of the mistakes on a small number, you could probably forgive it and say, hey, that's really crap, but we can live with that. But it was just something else to hit them with at the minute, and they didn't need that.
Do you know what else, though? Because it was in free play, this mission. You can't put a marker anywhere to guide you. There's no markers on the map that says, like, a world event's taking it. You literally have to just fly around and hope that you fly past something that you need. Or, trying to get to some of the tombs, you need to fly around, press start, right? Look at the map. Okay, right, I need to go this way. Fly. Oh, I need to check again. That's poor.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think there should be some sort of marker system in the game. Most modern games these days have some form of marker system on the world map, and this one doesn't, which is a very strange decision to me. It's a very simplistic map as well. I expected a bit more variety with the map. It's almost like a map from a game made maybe in like 2008 or 2010 or something. A very strange choice with the map.
It does feel empty.
It's an empty map. It's just disappointing again, once again.
I think in one of the very early conversations we had when we all sort of jumped in on release day was that I called it a vast emptiness. It was just, sure, there's a lot of space, but there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, and I'm sure this is going to be quite an open to discussion topic in the general community, but to me, I would rather have, and I'm not saying a tiny space, because that would be crap in this day and age. Me personally, give me a moderately sized space with a lot of things going on, and I'm happy. I don't need the map the size that it is right now if there's going to be so little going on in so much of it.
Yeah, and there's no quick travel. So when you look at that map and you see that one of the tombs is at the other end of the map.
That's a baffling
Yeah.
decision, isn't it? What a baffling decision that was, not to include some sort of fast travel system within the map itself. I do not understand that.
It's
I really
crazy. It's one of those things, and I'm sure I'll probably repeat myself a few times throughout the course of this today, but it's one of those things that we say, okay, well, that's in previous games, so it's surely going to be included in this. Oh, wait. No, it isn't. Why? Like, seriously, why? I'm not asking to be able to fast travel to every single location, because that would just be boring anyway, and you'd never get to see anything.
Just
But
put me somewhere
come
close
on,
in the vicinity.
give me 5 or 6 like fast travel spots throughout the map, because that's standard.
Surely
Like
this is
we've come
basic.
to expect that. It is so standard.
It's so basic. Like how have they not done that? I'll never
I don't
understand.
know.
I'll never understand.
It's such an oversight. I don't understand how they could have even come to the conclusion. How could because they test the game and everything, how could playtesters play that game and gone, actually, no, yeah, you're right, there's no need for a fast travel. It just makes no sense. Surely that was pointed out when people tested the game. Like, oh, actually, maybe a fast travel system would be useful here to save people traveling for 15 minutes for no reason.
You'd like to think so, but
crazy.
Clearly not, or they didn't listen. Well, anyway,
Probably just not at launch.
Yeah,
we'll go with
well,
that.
yeah.
They like that answer.
They do.
Well, we'll move on to another point. Loot. What do you guys think of the loot system in this game?
I'll go first on this one, and I'll try not to take up too much rant time here, but
They take up as much as you
overall,
need, pal.
I'm going to say that I'm satisfied with the loot drops in terms of their number. They still feel plentiful, and that's regardless of the sort of patches that have gone on in the last couple of days with the mistakes they made and then corrected and arguably made things worse. But hey, the variety in the loot, however, is straight garbage. Straight garbage. The loot pool, whether it's guns or armor or components, is so small, it's unreal. In a looter shooter. For the love of God, how they ever put this together and how they ever looked at their own loot table and said, yeah, this will suffice. It's astonishing. The random rolls on even the best loot, more often than not, aren't even worth considering. Sure, sometimes you do get an exception to the rule, and you'll get a roll that influences your abilities by quite a high percentage, cooldown time, higher damage, things like that. Really, really useful. But it's few and far between. It really is. And it's so dissatisfying. It's unreal.
Yeah, I'd second that. It's hard to add much to that. It's difficult to say anything else apart from that because you've pretty much nailed it. The loot is most of the time rubbish. It just, there's the odd thing where you go, oh, that's kind of cool, but it's like, I suppose it's not just about the loot with this question really, because it comes back to the sort of design choices, doesn't it, as well, with like the design of like the weapons and things like that. It's just, there's not enough variety.
They all look the
same. They all look the same. The loot kind of like feels the same. You basically just feel as if you're just doing it to pad that. It's just get your numbers up, and I get that's the whole point of these type of games like Destiny, to get your numbers up, to get your power level up, stuff like that. But I felt like at least in Destiny, I actually felt the loot in Destiny was quite fun, and some of the weapons were cool and stuff like that, and the names were cool. In this, it's just there's a couple of different names for snipers like Whirlwind and Devastator, but that's it. There's like 2 or 3 names for snipers, and that's
People
it.
want variety as well.
It's boring, to be honest. It's like,
it's funny though. It's funny. Let me pick up on that. You mentioned people want variety, and there's a few named. I mean, the Whirlwind and the Devastator, they're common and sort of first stage drops. They're not masterworks. They're not legendary stuff. My absolute hate with this is that if we take that for example, so the sniper rifles, there's the Whirlwind, which is a semi-automatic. There's the Devastator, and there's one other, and they all have their own archetypes. So the Whirlwind is a semi-auto, the Devastator is a single-shot high explosive, and the third, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, which pretty much says it all, is a stereotypical single shot sniper with, I think it's 6 in the standard mag.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got 3 archetypes of sniper rifle there, and they are the only ones that exist within that archetype. So instead of having a few semi-auto sniper rifles with notable differences, instead of having a few single-shot sniper rifles, they have one of each. That's bullshit.
Yeah, it's
in a
not good
game
enough,
like
is it?
this.
It's not good enough.
And I know people will say, oh, but when you get to the Masterwork stage, which, hey, I've been there for a long time, when you get to the Legendary stage, yeah, you do get a couple more. But it's literally that. It goes from 1 to 2, 3 with some of the archetypes. That's astonishing. How did they ever think that was okay? And I come back to what I said before. Nobody could have looked at that loot table and thought, yeah, we've got 1, 2, maybe 3 weapons of the same archetype overall, not just at the beginning, not just in one sort of phase of the game, overall from start to finish, and that's going to satisfy people. That is the most mind-boggling decision of them all. The loot is so bad.
One thing I think as well is with sort of the abilities you get on the weapons, obviously, with Masterwork you get 4, with Epic you get 3. Not with Epic, sorry. Yeah, with is it very rare or Epic? Which one? Epic, isn't it? You get 3. Very rare. Is it rare 2? Yeah. So what I don't like about that sort of thing is there's so many like useless things you can get on your gun, and it's like that shouldn't even really be in the game. I mean, there's one. I think we were talking about those perks. That's quite a common thing you seem to get is that like harvest plus 25%. And it's like this is a waste of time. What? No one. You're never going to use that. That's never going to be useful. It's never going to be useful because the harvesting in the game for a start off is at the minute kind of pointless.
Completely
It
pointless.
doesn't mean
right
anything.
now.
And it's like, how many things like that are on the weapons though? It's like I don't want to just get this off. I'd rather not even have it on at all. And it's like.
Well, this was my point before about the
annoying.
random rolls of the weapons, right? If you get something with a harvest, or if you get something with 10% ability cooldown with the RB or LB slot, or however your controller layout is on whichever platform, that there is no debate. You can only run the ability ones because you would be crazy to replace them, especially as you progress throughout the game. There is no use in having a magazine with 1 extra shot when you can have an LB ability that does 20% more damage or has a 15% cooldown time on the RB ability. There is no comparison. So the majority of the random rolls are completely useless.
Yep.
And I know people will say to me, because, hey, I've been there in the past as well, it's about going for that God roll, which is fine. But the difference between the God rolls and the trash rolls is cavernous. There's stuff that you shouldn't even touch, or you shouldn't even be allowed to get rolls like 25% extra harvest, and
just a waste of time.
It's pointless. It's absolutely useless. So there is absolutely no point in anything other than right now having the God roll. Anything less than that is crap.
Yep.
And that there's no, oh, I got close to it. I got a pretty good roll on that. No, you either got a God roll or you got garbage, which, again, is so frustrating.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't think I could put it better myself. I mean, from day one, I think I was moaning to you guys about the loot.
Yeah.
When we were playing, I just kept saying, this is crap.
Pretty much.
I mean, I know, you know, loot shooters, you don't always get what you want, but...
One thing I'd say, I would say maybe in the defense of the sort of roles and things like that, and I think the further on you get in the game, I think when you start getting masterwork counts and things like that, that's when you start feeling a bit more like, oh, you know, this is actually a really cool weapon and there's actually good perks. And I think when you're first starting out and when you're in the mid game, it's kind of like, it's kind of rubbish. There's no difference. But I think as you get to masterwork level, it starts getting a bit more exciting. I would say that.
It gets more satisfying because things start looking cooler.
Yeah, exactly.
The names change.
Yeah.
Of things. The role looks really, really interesting.
Yeah.
But then here's the thing. You get a duplicate masterwork and you look at it and it's almost the exact same thing. Sure, the minor roles change, but again, it's so pointless. It's unreal. If you get a role that influences abilities or higher level weapon damage, that's the god roll. You don't want a masterwork with Harvest. You don't, say for example, if you were running a 6-shot sniper and one of them was a magazine extension and it goes from 6 to 7, it's not beneficial right now. It doesn't matter. So everything else is pointless. And yeah, sure, things can look good on the surface, but unless it's ability or damage based and it's significant, it still doesn't matter. It's the same thing, and it plagues it. Whether you've got an epic roll with just a small number of sort of minor rolls to go with it, or a legendary with 4 or 5 on the masterwork ones, it's useless.
Well, the thing is, as well, some people could turn around and say, "Well, you've just been really unlucky and you're moaning." But the thing is, it happens. This isn't just some infrequent. This is happening frequently with these rolls, and I've even noticed this now as I've started going into the higher tiers of loot, and it's not just you're moaning because you've had bad luck. This is clearly some sort of design flaw, as far as I'm concerned, with the game in terms of the weapon rolls. I just don't think they've got it right initially. Now, I'm sure they're going to change it, and I'm sure they will over the months and years to come. They'll improve, I'm sure, but initially, I think I just don't think they've got it right with the weapon rolls.
Well, that's the thing. Before we just move on ever so quickly, is I actually haven't had bad luck. My rolls have been really, really good, and I'm an extremely high level, and everything, I should be pleased with this. But the fact that I'm not speaks volumes, I think.
Yeah, it does. And one thing though I want to touch on as well, that has seemed to be another pointless part of the game, is the in-game economy.
Yeah, right now it's.
I mean, trying to actually buy things that are useful or craft use the money to craft certain things is pretty pointless at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'll start with this one. I think, we all expected, didn't we, that we knew these sort of things were going to be in the game, the crafting, the microtransaction style stuff that you can buy, but they've not even incentivized, using microtransactions, because there's no point buying anything right now, even with microtransactions, because the crafting's all messed up for a start off. And that's not just, numerous people have said this. Is the crafting just is pointless at the minute. You scrap all these weapons and you get all this crafting material to use on pretty much absolutely nothing, because crafting at the minute is pointless in the game. You try and craft a weapon or something like that, it's never as powerful as a weapon you've already got, or a component, or whatever it may be. You go into that featured store, and I just can't see how anyone right now would be tempted to buy anything on that store whatsoever, or buy any of the materials. And the materials you already do have, I would imagine surely that BioWare developers would have thought, oh, people, want to use these crap, but I can't see why anyone wouldn't just save them up at the minute, because why would you use them? Because it's pointless, and like you said about the economy, you get so little coins and things like that, and it's just a waste of time at the minute using any coins. So it just seems a bit broken to me.
You can't afford anything decent anyway.
No, exactly. It's silly.
I mean, we were playing the other day, weren't we? And you were saying, "Oh, I'm saving up." I mean, Perks were like, "For what though?" Because you can't use it.
My point was, I'm saving up because there's no point buying anything right now, and the only thing I can think of is there will be something, hopefully, that will be worth buying in a couple of months' time, and I'll have made a good decision by not spending any coins. But I think everyone's going to be in the same boat, because why would anyone have spent anything? Because it's pointless.
What are your thoughts on this, Perks?
Yeah, it's another thing that it shouldn't even be in the game right now.
No, it's pointless.
If this was going to be something that was included, and I know people will say, the more the merrier, and the more sort of strings to the bow, crafting is irrelevant. There is no point to it, like Suds just said. You've touched on the economy. Things that you might want to buy are way too expensive to even warrant buying them. For example, the Masterwork Embers. There's nothing that you can really achieve with crafting. At the beginning of the game, I did a couple of common going on sort of rare items
Hmm.
just for the hell of it to see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I know we're going so I'll reference a completely different style of game here, but when you think about something like The Witcher, where especially on the harder difficulties, the way that you craft and the way that you put things together significantly influences how you can sort of partake in the game. That's a great way of doing things. This is just useless. I mean, you do a couple of missions, you're never going to need to craft anything. You get the same stuff, and right now, that's the irrelevancy. There is no point other than the novelty of saying, "Oh, I crafted this," instead of getting it from a drop that you will very quickly get anyway. I don't understand it. I don't know how they put this together and thought it's
It's a
worthy of being included in the
it's
game
a
right
broken system at the moment, I think.
now. Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to fix this because
They have to.
I say fix. It's not necessarily broken. It's just pointless. I'm sure they're going to reinvent this because, hey, it could be really, really cool. It has a lot of potential, and the crafting, the economy side of things is always going to change over time in games like this. So whilst I'm frustrated that it's so useless right now, I can see the light with this one. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah,
Well,
but you won't
even
be playing the game by the time that
Well,
comes around.
Oh God, no!
possibly
But
not. But I was just going back to the store and stuff. Even if you were like, you didn't mind the fact that you got no coins hardly for doing things and it was like everything was expensive. What is there to even buy that's worthwhile in that store? There's like, I don't think the designs are very nice on at the minute of the things that are in the store. I know it changes based week to week, but there's not much to buy. You'd think there'd be more variety in the things you could buy, wouldn't you? There's just nothing.
I think
It's
that's
pointless.
actually been one of the wider sort of raised points from people
Yeah.
that are more interested in things like that. Because I've said many a time that side of the customization
Well, no,
I couldn't care less about. But many big YouTubers and sort of influencers right now have basically said, hey, even if you want to spend your money on this game for whatever godforsaken reason, there's not a lot to actually spend it on,
No, there isn't.
which is bizarre because sure that the microtransactions are present, but
And
there's just not a lot of them right now.
I don't think the design. I don't know about you two. I don't think we've been that bothered really about sort of the customization option. I haven't really looked too much into it. I did customize my Javelin. I'm sure you two have maybe done a little bit, but the actual customization options aren't that great. I don't think. I don't know.
No, this is what I was going to touch on next,
armor,
actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Well.
No, you go ahead.
I mean, we may as well get into it now, I suppose. But I don't think the options are very good. I think everything looks very similar, almost the same in some aspects. You choose like maybe a leather type of armor, armor or something like that, and it looks the same as a metallic one. And it's just like, well, no, because in real life it would look completely different, the style, and it doesn't look different in this. And the color. I mean, to be fair, there is a lot of different colors you can choose, and that's all well and good. There's a lot of variety in the coloring, but the actual not. I've looked through quite a lot of the armors, and none of them look very nice, and that's the difference. I know people don't like this. Keep going back to Destiny, but I'm going to go back to it. In Destiny, there is some really cool armors, and yes, okay. As the game went on, there was more and more, so we've not given Anthem enough time yet. But even at the start of the game, I thought there was some really nice armors in Destiny. They look good. Whereas in this, I don't think any. I've not seen. I don't know about you two when I've been playing in public expeditions. I've not seen one armor where I thought, "Wow, that is magnificent. I'd love to look like that." Once,
No.
not once. So
Well,
that says it all.
I think this is a trick they've missed, to be honest, because the Javelins are cool, but the customization options for them
Terrible.
pretty bland.
They're boring. Really.
I think cosmetically the color customization is actually very good, and I like the fact that you can customize individual sort of panes and parts of your armor and gear. I think that's good. I'll sort of pay my dues on that one. I'm pleased with what they've done there. But apart from that, wow. I mean, Sud, you talked there about in comparison to Destiny, and I'll say it's a little bit unfair because don't forget in Destiny you actually actively change armor pieces. There's Titans that all look completely different, Warlocks and Hunters likewise. Whereas in this, if you are a Storm or a Colossus, a Ranger or an Interceptor, from a viewpoint in terms of how the armor is displayed, it is the same. It never changes. The only thing that changes is the design and the color. So you never equip a different helmet. You never have a different chest plate. It's the same. It's just different colors and different designs. And it's a different game. So I'm not going to come down too hard on it for that. But for me personally, and I'm not a great fan of the sort of customization thing anyway in any game, so I'm not going to be too hard, like I said. But when I look at Destiny and I can have 5 Titans stood side by side, all looking completely different, all wearing completely different sort of sets of armor, and then I look at this and I have 5 Storms stood side by side, and the only thing that's different is the color and
They
the
look like
design
Power
of that
Rangers.
color.
Yeah.
It's a bit underwhelming. So whilst they do have a great set of sort of color customization and the custom palette that you can use, in reality, when you actually put it into practice, it looks good, but everybody is still the same. The armor doesn't change, and that, I mean, we knew that going in anyway, so it's not a surprise.
But they've missed a trick.
But it is
I agree.
underwhelming. I for sure. And I actually think, and maybe I'll be wrong on this one, but I think in a long way in the future, because I think that's how long it'll take, you will start to see different armor sets rather than just designs.
Well, I certainly hope so.
They should have had that in from the start, I think.
Yeah. It's a common theme. This we've said it a few times now. How many times have we already said they should have had it in from the start? I mean, how many times do we need to keep saying it?
Well, they did say, didn't they, not at launch for most things.
I mean, yeah,
there we go.
I know this is more of a side point, but how many times have we already, all of us, said it should have been in at launch, should have been in from the start? And it's like, this is a game made in 2019, following in the footsteps of games made in 2014, 2017, and if you count like the Division, 2016, 2015.
They've had 6 years as well.
It's just, it's not good enough, is it? And I've seen a lot of people sort of, defending the game, and that's everyone's entitled to their opinion. If you love the game, and that's fine, fair enough. But there's certain things in this game that even the most hardened fan cannot defend.
Mm-hmm.
They just can't defend it because it's not acceptable. A game that has been in development for this long and has seen so many of these type of games do well and do good things well and do bad things, and they sort of not done a lot of the good things that they've done well, and they've actually done a lot of the bad things that they've done. It's just like
absolutely. I think my last touch on the customization side of things would be to talk about the custom loadouts, which I was really excited about when I first read that they were included, because one of my pet hates in the Destiny universe is that, oh, hey, this activity is going to change throughout, and just because I'm starting with a hand cannon and sniper rifle to begin with, later on I'm going to need an assault and a scout, or whatever. Throw in whatever weapon type you want. I thought, great, custom loadouts, I can press start, click from 1 to 2, and I've done that. No, wrong. The custom loadouts are restricted to the pre-mission selection, and you can't change anything away from the Forge. So I've gone from being frustrated with the fact that in Destiny, I have to sit there and pause the game and manually swap my hand cannon to my scout, my sniper to my shotgun, my rocket to my whatever. And now I'm frustrated because I can't even do that. I choose guns before the mission begins and I've got them until the very end. I can't change my abilities. Come on.
That's silly.
Why?
It really is.
That's just bad. It's so bad it's unreal. Like the fact that you can't change anything during the mission, any activity, you just have to wait until you go back to the Forge.
And then to compound matters, Perks, the loading screens take an age.
Yeah,
that doesn't help.
So you have to sit there waiting.
I just again, this is something that 6 years ago I would have been frustrated with. Now, in this era, and having seen games similar to this include better options, and for this to release and go backwards in time, it feels.
Well,
it drives me mad.
What I always think as well with these loading screens is, what's it loading? Because there's nothing in the world half the time. What's it loading? Like, you load back into Fort Tarsis, well, there's not much there. You load into a mission, it starts off spot. I mean, it just... I don't get it half the time with these loadings. I can understand if it's a massive game that's, a sprawling world, sort of a Red Dead Redemption 2 type game where there's tons going on at once and stuff like that. But this game, nothing's happening. There's static characters.
The loading screens is up there as well for me with especially if you're playing with randomers and you're lagging behind a little bit, and it's like, oh, we're going to transport you to the mission area in 20 seconds or whatever, and it's just like, oh my god, I'm literally right behind them.
Yeah, that's so strange.
That comes up all the time.
I think I was talking to you about this, Pers, the transport to mission thing. I think it's a little bit broke sometimes as well. Sometimes you're miles away, and that's fair enough, because it's like, okay, you were miles away, you should be transported. But sometimes you're literally right next to the thing, and it's starting to say transport, and it's like, I'm right there. Like, I don't need to be transported.
Yeah, I don't think the game isn't coded in that way to understand where you are in relation to the mission marker. It's basically just you're outside of that mark, and whether you're 1 yard away or 1,000 yards away, it's the
still
same
frustrating
principle.
though.
It's incredibly frustrating.
It isn't frustrating.
I think I'm trying to think of the word for it. I guess the sort of tether between teammates needs to be enhanced, needs to be increased, so that you can be further away and not get teleported, because it needs to be, like I just touched on, it needs to be coded in one way and not the other. But I mean, that's never going to change, because that's something that's going to be sort of deep rooted into that code now. So yeah. But hey, that loading screen, I mean, I can speak from an Xbox One X perspective. It pops up, it's 5 seconds, and then it's gone. But it's 5 seconds every time it happens, and it's not that intrusive, but my god, is it annoying?
It is annoying.
And there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Not just with
they're everywhere.
Not just with the sort of catch-up mechanic of joining you to your teammates. They are everywhere, in and out of dungeons, from Forge to the Fort to the launch bay to the missions. They're just everywhere. And
slows the pace of the game right down, especially when you're battling as well. When you think about how fluid and quick-paced the combat is and flying mechanics. Yeah. And then everything else
kills
is
the
so
immersion,
slow.
doesn't it? It's crazy. But do you know what? I think even if they presented them in a different way, and maybe you guys won't agree with this, but they're presented like a PS2 game, for Christ's sake. They give you a black screen with a still image and a loading bar at the top with a stupid
really
tooltip at the bottom. How about when it's a loading screen, you see your Javelin flying through flipping space or something like that? Just so it doesn't kill your immersion, just so it's not like great black screen with a still image. If you're going to be including incessant amounts of loading screens, then God, at least do it in a way that's interesting.
Yeah, they're definitely not engaging. And I want to move on to one of the worst parts of the game for me, and that's the Fort Tarsis, because I think that place is barren. I think it's shit. It just is. I mean, they said that apparently when you're in the Fort Tarsis, that you can have conversations and make decisions that will change the surrounding areas that you're in. It'll affect the game, impact the game. Your choices
Every decision
matter.
counts.
Rubbish.
What choices?
Absolute nonsense. I think I actually touched on this before about the little speech bubbles and stuff. They make no difference whatsoever. You get into conversations, and in a typical conversation, you might make 2 or 3 decisions. It doesn't. But the next time you go into the conversation, it makes no difference. It's the same dialogue. So what's the point? There's no point. It's stupid. So and I've just got to say as well, I think that Fort Tarsis has got to be the most annoying place to walk around in a social space sort of. I mean, for a start off, it's not really a social space because it's just you. But you know what I'm trying to say. It's got to be the most annoying place that I've seen in that type of game to walk around. It's so confusing and annoying to walk around, and you go up these stairs, and it's like, oh, it's not. No, the marker says there, so you have to go down another set of stairs, and it's like, oh, come on.
It doesn't feel lived in either. Everyone's just stood still, and they might make a little animation, but that's it. But they said it would be lived in, as if people are going about their day-to-day business there or whatever.
It feels to me like you're going to Madame Two Swords half the time or something. Like going around Madame Two Swords, it's like half the people are just stood there, absolutely still.
Well, it's funny, right? Because if you remember the E3 trailer where they gave that stupid little message that said everything you're about to see was captured using in-game or something like that, in-game footage. and they have you sort of approaching the marketplace, and you get jumped by that character, and the mission sort of starts to develop in front of your eyes. That doesn't happen.
Nope.
That doesn't happen in the slightest. The
Terrible.
movement to me
Oh.
feels like you're on a camera, like on a film set, like you're sat in the chair with a camera and you're wheeling things around.
Yeah.
Because you don't move like a person, you move like a square. Pretty much, it's you can tell it's not a person. You can tell there's that sort of disjointment between your character within how you're actually playing, and then within the fort. It's horrible. The interactions are bad. The dialogue choices are bad because they make no difference whatsoever. Like you guys have already said, they're corny, and yeah, just that's it.
Well, do you know what else as well that we haven't mentioned? The fact that why in Fort Tarsis are you in first person mode, but the rest of the game's third person? Why not just walk around in third person in Fort Tarsis? That for me breaks the immersion as well. It's like you're playing the game in third person.
Well, you just touched on a point as well. What's the point in creating your character and what he looks like?
Yeah, what's the point? Why in Fort Tarsis?
You don't even get to see him in Fort Tarsis.
It's stupid.
When he's out the
It
suit.
should just be third person. Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe it was probably easier to design, maybe being in first person in the fort and stuff like that. I assume
Well,
it
you
is.
wouldn't
But,
think so. Jesus Christ.
well, I mean, yeah, but
do you know the obvious
the
comparison with this is Destiny, right? Destiny is a first-person shooter, but when you go to a social space, the tower, it's in third person.
It's in third person,
and it actually looks really, really cool, and
Yeah.
it works so well to have that first to third person experience. This game, nah. You go to that first-person Fort Tarsis, and it's crap. It's
Yeah, it really
seriously bad. It feels like a different game, and
Yeah,
and the
it
game
actually does.
This side of the game is just so bad. You know what? I think one of the biggest mess ups with Fort Tarsis above anything else is that should have been the social space.
Yep.
Not this tacked on launch bay garbage.
We've not even got onto that.
Well, this is part of Fort Tarsis as far as I'm concerned, because
terrible.
Pre VIP demo and pre sort of launch, and before we had any further information, everybody, and I mean everybody, knew Fort Tarsis as the social space, as the hub. This is where you get missions. This is where you interact with people. This is where you see other freelancers and other Javelins. That's what everybody thought, and rightly so. They didn't do that. They messed up so badly on such an easy thing to include, for God's sake. So they tack on this launch bay, which you should never go to. Ever.
Yeah, never. It's pointless.
Because it is
It's
so pointless. It is untrue. It is a mini hangar with disastrous loading screens going from the forge in the hangar back into the hangar to the microtransactions menu, back into that. It is bad. And the only reason the launch bay exists is because they messed Fort Tarsis up so badly and didn't think that was a social space, or should have been a social space, that they had to appease people by putting in the launch bay, which is a disaster of a social space. So not only did they miss once with the fort, they miss again with the launch bay, and it's two wrongs making a third wrong. It's horrendous.
They just seem to be making really basic mistakes, don't they? Like things that you think would be kind of easy to get right, especially because they got other games to take, inspiration from, I guess. And they just seem to fall short of the mark each time.
I mean, the fact that they weren't actually going to include a social space in a game like this before people said, whoa, hold on, so Fort Tarsis isn't the social space? They were like, nah, it's not. And everyone was like, okay, so what the hell is? And then in the last couple of weeks, they were like, oh, God, launch bay. Yeah, that'll do. That says it all. That really says it all.
Do you think their interpretation of this genre of game was just wrong?
Well, it seems like it, doesn't it? I mean, and I don't know if you used to saw this, you might have done. I can't remember where I saw it now, so I can't say like the source or anything like that, but I did see somewhere that someone from BioWare did say something like, "Oh, we didn't look at other shared world shooters when we made this game." And for a start off, that's terrible. If that's true, that is ridiculous. How can you didn't look at other games?
that's what everyone. As much as people say, "Oh, you're copying," yeah, but the whole point is you take. If you're making a game 6 years later on from the original shared world shooter, you have to take inspiration from some things it did, or else what are you doing?
Well,
Like,
it'd be smart. You can look at. You've got the chance to look at these games and go, right. People have complained about
Exactly.
this. They love this. Well,
Yeah.
we'll incorporate that because that's great because they love it, and
Yeah.
we will improve on what they don't like.
Yeah.
What?
I know. It's baffling to
It
me.
is baffling.
It's like the game's been made in a vacuum, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to be honest, it seems like the game's been made in a vacuum based off a lot of the problems.
It seems like the people who made this game have been in a 6-year vacuum.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, and I feel sorry for them if that's the case, because they've got all these great things out there that they can take inspiration from, like you said, and use the great examples and strip back all the terrible ones that have been there for us in the last 4 years or so, and make a great game. But it honestly looks like, and it's funny that you should say that, Sid. I hadn't heard that comment that they hadn't looked at other games, and I'm not even calling this a shared world shooter because it's not. It just isn't. I said the other night, I think you guys might have been in the party chat when I was talking about it. It feels like Destiny didn't exist. Destiny 1 or 2. It feels like The Division never existed. It feels like Warframe never existed. Because this feels like the first ever game in this partial shared world genre where they have no examples to go off. They're the first ones in. They're putting down their flag and going, what do you think of this? And it's like, okay, we've never seen this before. And then what's good and what's bad is evolved over time, and people find out what they like and don't like. And then Bungie comes along and releases Destiny, and they go, hey, we're going to take all your good stuff. No, this game has all the examples. And you can't tell that. This feels like the first iteration of a game like this, and it's not. It's the newest iteration, and it is by far the worst.
Yeah. I think
definitely.
I think that sums it up quite nicely, actually. It does have that sort of feel like they're testing the waters with certain things, hoping to get a response and then, implement it, where other people are going, no, look at other games that have already done it.
This water's being tested.
Yeah, exactly.
Numerous times.
Well, another element that I do actually want to touch on is the glitches in the game. And I know we've hammered the game already, and it might seem like we're constantly hammering it, but I think this is an issue we can't avoid, and that is the glitchiness of the game and some of the problems like that. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk first of all, Perks, about the free play, the quick mission, I should say, glitch.
I mean, I will give a glitch summary of what I've seen through launch, and the quick play mission for me. Everyone apparently experiences different things with this crap, but for me, up until today, or a few hours before we started recording, was that I couldn't play quick play. That was the glitch. Every mission was broke to the point where it was the same mission, and there was a never-ending swarm of enemies. It never progressed. It was stuck. Quick play missions could not be played. They could not be completed, full stop. One guy, one random I played with, messaged me and said, hey, to fix this, we need to do a squad wipe. Yeah, good luck getting 4 randomers to do that. No chance.
Not acceptable.
There's no fix it by doing a squad wipe. There's fix it by it being fixed. There's that. There's the enemy crap that still has certain enemies not shooting back. They occasionally still disappear. There's getting hit through solid surfaces by certain attacks, which is just the cheapest thing I've ever seen. There's bugs where enemies will literally spam the same attack like they've been caught in the code to use that attack. For example, Sid, me and you were talking earlier whilst we were playing, and I was in a battle with 2 Titans that got stuck inside each other, side by side, like Siamese Titans or some crap, and they were both funny. Doing the fireball attack repeatedly, like the code was broke. So they fired like 3 at a time or 4 at a time or whatever they were doing. I lost count because they kept hitting me with them, and the same thing happened to my squad, right? We just got fireball after fireball, and it lasted about 10 minutes before we just thought this is useless. So the glitchiness, and everybody's experienced different things. it's really bad.
Well, I mean, I have experienced some of the things you've experienced, not all, but some of them. I think the worst one for me, which I'm actually, considering you've played the game for so long, I'm surprised you haven't had this glitch. This might have been the one that pushed you over the edge, maybe, but the glitch for me that was the worst was when I did 2 missions, I think it was, the other day. Pretty much, don't think they were back to back, but within the space of maybe a couple of hours each other. So a decent time frame. And basically, you'd go all the way to the end of the mission. You'd kill the final sort of boss, whether it was like an Ur6 or a Titan, something like that. And basically, what happens is, once you kill the last enemy, the loot comes out of it, blah, blah, blah. And it says, like, mission ends, doesn't it? In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And then you go back to the Fort Tarsis. Well, what would happen is you defeat the said Ur6 or Titan, whatever the last boss was. And basically, the game got stuck and didn't ever do the mission ending thing. So you were basically stuck and the game was broke, basically. And you had to, you had this, people were trying to like fly around the map, seeing if that unglitched it. No, people like waving to each other and stuff like that. It just wasn't working. And basically you have to just end the expedition, which I think that's a terrible glitch. Now, okay, I've got to say the last day or two, it hasn't happened to me, but the fact that it happened at all is terrible. The fact that you can go through a 30-minute contract, do everything. Now, okay, luckily I was only playing on normal, so it wasn't too bad. But can you imagine if you're playing on Grandmaster 3 and that happens to you? How annoyed would you be?
It sounds really frustrating.
Acceptable.
I mean, I will say on that, not to defend it by any means, but I think one of the more common glitches from sort of launch to now has been the never-ending mission glitch, where it doesn't proc in one way or another, whether it's quick play or a contract.
It's not acceptable.
It's been quite vocally said in
definitely
many different places, so it does seem to be lessening, but again, the fact that it's there in the first place, not good.
Well, another glitch I actually had today.
The list goes on.
Yeah, well, just one more actually. It was just before we started recording. Actually, now this is probably not a common glitch or anything, but I was trying to talk to an NPC that I had to finish. And sometimes when you finish contracts, you have to talk to said NPC, don't you, to get it to fully finish and start the new contract. Well, I went to speak to a certain person, and they started disappearing in and out of the room and like teleporting around the room. And it took me a good 2 minutes to get it to sort itself out so I could finally speak to the person. It's just, look, it's not the end of the world. That's not a glitch that's the end of the world, but it just adds to more problems to the game. You just think, what is going on here? It's
that's
just, how
what
is
you
this
get for wanting Fort Tarsis to be more alive.
Yeah, teleporting NPCs.
Well,
it's just...
fortunately for me, I've not experienced as many glitches as you guys. I've had a couple of crashes though during missions, which obviously hasn't been that fun. But I do want to move it on to BioWare's 90-day roadmap for Anthem. So basically the upcoming content that they have scheduled. I know this is something you were looking at, Perks, yesterday. What are your thoughts on their plans? Because it looks like the Cataclysm won't be here till, what was it, May?
Yeah, it's May. It's towards the end of their roadmap. And the roadmap itself is garbage, unfortunately, because whilst there's a few interesting looking things, a couple of new world events, a couple of different, I want to call them missions, but they're not. They're just legendary missions. It looks like they're going to be legendary versions of the story missions, so not particularly new anyway, but hey, at least other ways to play. There's going to be a few different equipment drops, so probably new weapons, new components, new seals, or whatever relates to whichever class that you're playing as. They could have condensed the roadmap drastically, because they actually have the gall, the nerve to list codex entries in a roadmap. Gee, thanks for that.
Yeah,
I can't wait to wait 90 flipping days to press A on something or X on something, whichever, and get a one sentence piece of dialogue.
When I saw that though, Perks, I was just like, really? I think I said this to you earlier. I was just like, that was my first reaction. Really? A Cortex entry is part of your roadmap? Come on. Now that is just, it's taking the mick, and it really is.
They're advertising that
it's
as a thing.
astonishing.
It's just ridiculous.
It
really
shows you how sparse the roadmap actually is, that instead of just calling it down the middle, they pad it out with these stupid thumbnail type entries. If you pull up the website, you can actually see it for reference. And they list the same thing multiple times to try and make it look like there's more there. And God, between sort of the time of recording now and in the next few days, I would pray that they fix this, because come on, who are you trying to kid? Who are you trying to kid? You cannot advertise crap like that as part of the roadmap. You just can't. Sure, new missions or high-level missions, new ways of playing them should be included. The Cataclysm right at the end, absolutely. The new gear that we're going to be getting, yeah, sure. This is all things part of a roadmap. New codex entries, no.
It's laughable.
That's something that slips through the net. That's something that appears within the game, and you go, oh, I haven't seen this before. I'll just click on it, because why not? You cannot advertise that as content that's coming. You absolutely can't. And one of the things on there that's interesting is the fact that we'll be getting a new stronghold before the Cataclysm. And wow, we should be grateful for that, right? Because currently there's 3 strongholds in the game, and you have to have completed the main storyline to access all 3 of them. But anyway, one of them is the Tyrant Mine thing, which was seen by everybody in the earliest developer walkthroughs, and it was played by everybody in both the VIP and standard demo. So there's number 1.
Yep,
Number 2 is Scar Temple, or the Temple of Scar, even, to give it its real name, which was seen by everybody, especially if anyone follows any EA Game Changer on any kind of social platform. You'll have already seen the Temple of Scar, maybe even played it within the sort of VIP early access on Origin, if you got that far before worldwide launch. And one which pertains to the main story, which I'll avoid going into just in case, spoilers, but you have played it before in the story. So all 3 strongholds that exist within the game right now, you've seen them all before you even play them.
Yes.
Like, that's... Oh, for God's sake. Just when you think it
ridiculous.
Can't get any worse. I mean, I said about a month ago on this show, if this game launches with 2 or 3 strongholds, exact phrase, this game's in trouble. Because this is their end game. This is how it launches as an end game. And yeah, there'll be cataclysms, which we don't even know what the hell that means down the line. Strongholds are what will make this game strong. Or not, because they only had 3 of them. And the fact that we've seen them already by the time you actually complete the story, I lose the will to live with stuff like this.
The more I think about the strongholds, the more it makes me think there should have been a stronghold for each area in the game. You know, on the map there's about, 7, 8 areas in the game, named areas? I think each place should have had a stronghold. And I don't think that's unrealistic. I think they could have done that.
Yeah,
right?
and you know what
yeah.
the funny thing is, right? And we'll say it, and we'll probably get people say it's nothing like that. Strongholds are strikes from Destiny. That's all they are. They last longer. There's more to them in terms of the length of time it takes to complete them, but that's it. That's it. And I was crazy enough to speculate that Strongholds would have more to them than strikes, but hey, how wrong I was. And Destiny 2 launched with, it was 6 base game strikes. Nowhere near enough. It was criticized roundly, rightly so. Should have been at least double that, because that's what people expected. This gives you 3 non-unique strongholds in the sense that we already knew what they were. So, come on.
Where's the excitement in that?
For God's sake.
Yeah, it's just...
And right now, Destiny 2's up to, I think it's 15 strikes. I noted down before when I had a quick look to see where we were fully up to with it. And that has the advantage of having been out, right? It's had numerous DLCs. They get added along the way. Blah, blah, blah. But, come on. Straight out the gate and you're going to give 3 non-unique strongholds. That's crap. Minimum 6. Yeah. Minimum 3 we haven't seen. Like you said, different areas of the map. Strongholds. They relate to all the different name locations. How simple is this? How simple is this? This is your end game.
They've created a map, right? And it's not the greatest map, is it? Really? I think we'd all, I don't think it's the greatest. I don't even think it's really the greatest world to explore into. There's some interesting areas. Don't get me wrong, but it could have been a lot better. Anyway, you've got each area and there's each named area. It just makes sense. Have a stronghold in each sort of area. It's simple, right? I don't know why that's hard.
They don't do simple.
The areas are big enough to have an entire stronghold within them each. So why don't they? Because a lot of them in the strongholds, a lot of the map isn't even used in the 3 strongholds. Now, yeah, like you said, Perks, they're going to add more strongholds, and I'm sure they'll use different areas of the map. But it should have been like that from the start.
I mean, look, the stronghold itself is never going to take place in the open world. But I do agree that you can have, hey, this is the insert name here stronghold. It relates to this area of the map. Yeah, it's a dungeon. Exactly. It's not going to take place in the open world. You can create it in any way you want. For example, the Temple of Scar. You don't see that aside from the actual stronghold. It's not in the open world. That's great because it's got to be unique. But say, for example, you had 6 name locations, and sure, there's more. There's no harm in saying, hey, this stronghold's located in this location.
Yeah.
Because they are pinpointed on the map, right? The 3 that we currently have. Pinpoint more. Give people more of this. This is your thing. And you don't get a situation like this. The fact that there's only 3 is so short. It doesn't even bear thinking about for the future of this game that this is their offering right now.
Well, touching on future... touching on future, I do want to take this then onto what we think about BioWare's long-term future after this, because it came out a couple of days ago that Anthem's physical sales are half of Mass Effect Andromeda's. And we all know what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda and the Montreal studio.
Well, I'd like to start with this one. Obviously, those sales figures... It's important to note they do relate to just the UK at the minute. We don't obviously have the figures for the rest of the world. So that's one important thing to note. So, yeah, like you said, it's sold in the same time frame. It sold half of what Mass Effect Andromeda did in its first week physically. Now, with the rise of digital, you would expect that number to maybe be higher, obviously. So maybe, best case scenario, what we discussed this. Maybe it sold around the same as Andromeda first week, possibly, if it's done really well digitally. So, but and we've heard some people sort of defending the sales, but even if it has sold the same as Andromeda first week, say worldwide it sold the same as Andromeda first week, that's not good enough for a game of this magnitude. It's not good enough. And I think they're in trouble. I really do. I think EA are going to look at this and go, why have we invested so much money in this team? Why have we still even got them, maybe? Should we just let them go? Should we just get rid of them? Because their prediction, wasn't it? Their prediction before the game came out was, from the release date to the 31st of March, we want the game to sell around 7 to 8 million copies. And that's seemingly going to be very, very, very difficult to achieve, if not impossible now, from what we've seen so far. Unless there's some miracle where the UK was just an anomaly and it sold brilliantly everywhere else. But the UK usually reflects the US and usually reflects the rest of Europe.
It feels like EA are going to see this as a massive failure.
Yeah,
and BioWare are in trouble. It feels that way.
I think so, because I can't envisage a scenario where they've sat down and gone, you know what, if it sells the same as Andromeda first week, that's pretty good. They would not have said that. They'd have said it has to sell at least, I think the game had to sell at least double, surely, at least double Andromeda's sales, or maybe even triple Andromeda's sales, because this was a hyped up game. This isn't some game where they've just pushed out. This game has been hyped up for a while now, and it's, supposedly their big game. Their big game of the year, isn't it? I mean, obviously with Apex, that might have changed now. But this was supposed to be their massive game, their massive multiplayer shooter of the year, and it's just it's sort of come out with a damp squib, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, well, EA wanted to move to a gaming service type style of games, and this was obviously going to be a big step forward for them, they thought, with this. With
it's a bit of a worry. I'm just basing that just on the sales alone. But
yeah. What do you think, Perks?
Yeah, I mean, look, the future of BioWare right now looks bad. And that's probably quite reactive based on what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. But let's not dance around the issue. It does. We all liked Andromeda to an extent. We didn't think it was fantastic, but we thought it was okay. But generally speaking, in terms of a wider audience, they're now 0 for 2 in recent times, and we can't ignore that. Andromeda, widely regarded as a fail. Anthem actually is considerably worse. So,
Andromeda made a profit, as well, and they still regarded it as a fail.
Well,
so...
it'll be interesting to see, obviously, with terms of profit and loss, because it's a games as a service game, it could make more money down the road. That is important to note, but it's not a good start.
Yeah, but right now, what we have, we know this is considerably worse in terms of how it's being received, and that's saying something because Andromeda got hammered initially.
Yeah.
Now, look, the way that the studios have worked, or not so much with the closures, and in terms of the staffing changes that will have gone on, the allocation of projects and things like that over the years, it's hard to sort of confirm or deny their future in terms of gaming in general, but this isn't going to be a long-lasting thing for them. I think that's quite clear and obvious to everybody right now. If they do have a future, it's in what they know best, and they have to get back to that, because this just really isn't it. Stay away from this style of game. Don't go near it.
But the problem is, will they be allowed to? That's the problem. It might be taken out of their hands. We know, for example, that Dragon Age 4 was announced in December. It's in fairly early stages of development, so you wouldn't expect that game to be out for probably at least 2 or 3 years. So you're looking at next generation for that game. But I worry about the future of that game, because if this game becomes a failure, EA are not. I just don't think EA are going to say, you know what, you can just carry on making loss-making games and stuff. I know Andromeda, like you said, Luke, did end up making a profit,
but that wasn't good enough for him.
No, it's not good enough. They're not just interested in, we want to make a little profit. And to be fair, it's understandable. They're a big company. They want to make money, don't they? That's what they've got shareholders to look at and things like that. They have to keep them happy. They're a big, they're a public company.
I mean, we know for sure
EA's priority is to make money at the end of the day. And if BioWare aren't doing that, then they're going to be cut away. It's as simple as that.
Like we absolutely know, like 100%, that EA are impatient. Like we've seen that before.
Exactly.
Projects get canned pretty quickly, and this isn't going to go down well. Let's not try and spin it in any way, shape, or form. This is going to be a big miss for EA, and they can thank God for Apex right now, because this is nowhere near what it could have been. And really, I think when we sort of look at the sales and the reception, and not just from ourselves, but from everybody right now, the VIP demo and the Origin Premier Access absolutely killed the sales of this game, because the problems were so bad in that first sort of period, where everybody got their hands on things, not just game changers, not just people who got granted early access. The world saw this game. And they knew it was a bust before it came out. Now, they took a risk with that, with the VIP demo, with the early releases, because if your product is bad, and how they didn't realize that it was, it's exposed. It's out there in the open with nothing to defend it, and everybody can see it pre-launch, and pre-orders get cancelled. We know from people we talk to in our circles, people cancelled their pre-orders pretty quickly based on what they've seen, or based on what they saw back then, should I say. And yeah, the fact that they were confident enough to give us the VIP demo and launch a week earlier than they should have with Origin Premier and EA Access, my God, did it put people off. And you can see that in the sales. The flip side of that is, if this game was amazing and it had a lot of good strings to the bow, the sales would have boomed, and it would have worked really well for them. But it's a risk-reward strategy, and it messed up big time.
Well, do you remember sort of in the early Xbox 360 days, things like that, when there was a lot of demos out, wasn't there? Actual demos, not betas. Like, there was real demos out for a lot of games before they came out. And they stopped doing them, didn't they, late in the 360 life cycle? Because what they were saying is that people were playing the demos and not really liking the game and going, I'm not buying it now because I played the demo. And they stopped doing it. And it's as if, and it was a good strategy, because, then it was like, well, you can't play the game until it's out, so you have to buy it. Whereas now, we've seemed to have seen this sort of emergence again of betas, don't we, and things like that. And it seems a lot of the time, sometimes it works now and again, but a lot of the time recently with games, it doesn't seem to be working. Because a lot of people are going, "I'll play the beta. I don't like it. Rubbish. Don't want it now." Or,
do you know what? I think there's an
I can wait
important
for this game when
distinction
it's
there.
fixed or whatever, or, you know.
I mean,
Yeah.
you said it, like, people are playing betas and saying they don't
Yeah.
like it. Hell, if you play an alpha or a beta, at least you can go, this is
True.
not a finished build.
True.
Hey, things are going to change quite drastically. They advertise this as a demo.
Yeah. So
Demo means a representation of the
full
final
experience.
product. Yeah. Not all of it. The things might not be included that are in, but it's a representation. This is finished. Here's a slice of it. Do you like it? It wasn't finished.
Hence, it's
It
in
wasn't
the name,
finished
isn't
at
it?
all.
What's
It was
demo
a
short for?
6-week-old, yeah.
Demonstration.
Exactly.
It's a demonstration of the game. So
they gave us a 6-week-old build that was broken to hell, and it put everybody off. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Well, and as a result, the future does look bleak for BioWare, it would seem.
Absolutely.
However, we'll finish our Anthem review there. It's safe to say that we weren't big fans of it. I think we've gone into detail as to why we're disappointed with the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think. Sorry, I was just going to give my sort of final finishing thoughts on it. I think, it's not. It's important to know. I don't think we hate every. It might think if people just maybe listen to the last half an hour, 40 minutes of the podcast, people might think we're absolutely trashing it and there's no good. There is good parts to this game, and there's definitely potential with this game. That's the worst part about it. There's potential with this game. And I do feel like in another year, 18 months, it could be a completely different game, and people might be like, "Oh, it was the sort of the Taken King for Anthem." Maybe the first DLC comes out, something like that. Because it's easy to remember Destiny was similar to this, not as bad, but similar in terms of no content, things like that. And they improved a lot, and they improved their image with fans. And Anthem could do the same, but as much as I've enjoyed the gameplay and things like that, and I am still enjoying the gameplay, and it's fun to play, but the other parts of the game eclipse that for me. And I think my final thought is that if I was to give it, say, a score, for example, I'd probably give it maybe a 5, 6 out of 10 at most right now.
Yeah, I mean, to give my in a nutshell, everyone knows that I was a massive Destiny fan over the years, and I stepped away in order to focus on this game. And people will say to me, am I not going to support it in the same way that I did Destiny? Well, look, Anthem has less main activities than Destiny did, less open world activities, less of an end game, less loot, whether it's weapons and armor, less components, less ways to progress, less flexibility with the loadouts. God, I'm going through the list. What else can I even put on there? The hub, yeah, great. Terrible social space. Worse social space than Destiny. The characters are worse, stories just as bad, but everything's worse.
Yeah.
And we're 4 years on, so...
What do you give out of 10?
I'll go 5, and that's because the gameplay itself within this broken shell of a game is really, really good, but no.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'll keep mine short and sweet. I really enjoyed the gameplay and flying mechanics. Unfortunately, though, it seems to fall flat in a lot of other areas, so it turned out to be a big disappointment for me. I'll probably go for a 5 out of 10 as well. Hopefully they can improve it in the future and people aren't put off and they give it a second chance, but I don't feel like that will happen. However, we will see, and we'll definitely keep our eye on it and BioWare's future. Anyway, where can people find you on social media, Sud?
You can find me at Twitter at David Tenspud.
Lovely stuff. How about you, Perks?
I'm at JG Perks, but as always, check me out on the podcast because that's where you'll get a response.
You never know, you might get lucky one day. Probably not. But yeah, you can find me on social media on Twitter and Instagram at Leld, LEL3Ds, add a 9 on the end for Instagram. And you can also find Checkpoint Reached on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ChetReachPod. We're also on YouTube, Checkpoint Reach Podcast. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, give us a like, give us a comment, let us know your thoughts on Anthem, and also give us a subscribe because that'll help the channel to grow. Well, I appreciate you guys giving me your opinions on the game, and thank you for joining me as ever.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure
Been good.
as always.
Good discussion.
Yeah, it's been fun. Anyway, the normal podcast will be back next week, so we look forward to speaking with you then, guys. Bye.
Okay.
Bye, guys.